So the director of Commando teams up Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee to take down the Japanese mafia in a film that had a very turbulent post-production history. So let's see how everything pans out with Showdown in Little Tokyo. In Los Angeles' Little Tokyo, the criminal underworld thrives under the dominance of the ritualistic Yakuza, who follow a strict code of loyalty. Detective Chris Kenner tries to shut down their illegal operations amidst racketeering and a growing drug trade, but once teamed with the smart-mouthed Johnny Murata, the two run headlong into danger. When their sole suspect kills himself while in custody, the two are faced with even worse affairs. A young woman named Angel is found decapitated while being high on a lethal narcotic, originating from Japan. As they dig into a Japanese nightclub to seek answers, they run into the very trouble they've been looking for, and are confronted with a Yakuza leader, Yoshida. Kenner immediately recognizes him as the man who slaughtered his parents years ago, leaving their killer with a slashed face. Johnny diffuses Kenner's impulse, and gets on the same page to make sure that he can take down the Yakuza the right way. As they stake out Yoshida and gather evidence against him, club singer and Angel's friend Minako is forcibly taken by Yoshida. The next day, she attempts a ritualistic suicide, only for Kenner to charge to her rescue by wasting all of Yoshida's armed security. Soon, Johnny and Kenner reteam to take in the Yakuza leader, but fighting through the hordes of henchmen proves a tougher task than imagined. Once Minako is abducted and the cops are believed dead in a junkyard scrap heap, the martial arts trained detectives pull everything together for a final battle where vengeance and justice go hand in hand. So Showdown in Little Tokyo saw its very limited theatrical release on August 23rd, 1981 through Warner Brothers, which ended up kind of being the sort of final fizzle out of the entire production here because grossing about $2.3 million off of an $8 million budget, and the fact that the entire production kind of had this sort of weird morphing type of thing right from the beginning of it, from story idea from director Mark L. Lesser, who had already done stuff like Firestarter and Commando, Class of 1984, Class of 1989. And so this entire idea of like doing the buddy cop action thing, but mixing in the sort of Japanese mafia stuff and kind of tying a few other little things into it, like a personal vendetta and all these little things going on, kept kind of changing tone and sort of aesthetics as it went through different screenwriters. Like, the original version was supposedly a lot more serious and a little less graphic, and then things got a little bit more violent, and some things also kind of a little more tongue-in-cheek. So the tone changed, and some other things kind of morphed here and there. So it was a very odd type of thing, how each screenwriter kind of gave a different sort of angle on the story here, until they landed on saying that Mark L. Lesser was kind of very much happy with the move forward on it, and kind of said, like, want to do sort of approach almost like an exaggerated, almost comic book style here, but compared to a lot of other sort of like over-the-top action films like Commando, didn't really go that far with that sort of style or that sort of approach to everything. There's still a very grounded sensibility towards the action and the drama and the stuff going on in the film, with some levity here and there and all that type of stuff, but Mark L. Lesser just has a very confident way of kind of going at this, because he's a seasoned director at this point. He's been doing stuff for 15 years or something like that. He's doing a lot of stuff that he's done before, and he knows how to do it very, very well, very efficiently. But the entire thing is where they start get into production. There's not really much known about like anything that was really going awry during production, but you had a lot of stuff where Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee, who were very much accomplished martial artists at the time, able to do a lot of their own stunts. Able to go in there, be a little more, do stuff that's a little bit more risky, a little more dangerous, but they feel confident they can make it happen with the stunt team and all the different things, and being with a very seasoned director who knows how to handle this stuff, they really went into it very well. But the problems where they kind of get into a little bit of a snag on the entire production is when they get into post-production. Because as they start editing the whole film, Warner Bros. Kind of previews it as like, they really don't like the film. They don't think it works very well. So they went in and brought one editor in to recut the entire film and start chopping stuff out. And then there was yet another editor, Stuart Baird, who is very much well known as one of the best editors out there, worked regularly with Richard Donner throughout many, many films, came in supposedly without any credit to his name, but he did come in and fix up yet another editor's work. So it's like there's 3 different sets of editors on the entire film that keep kind of snipping things and kind of reforming things and recutting things, and they end up cutting about 10 minutes out of the film from what Mark L. Lester's proper cut of the film was. And so there's a lot of things involved with him dealing with the entire process where it really kind of really soured him a lot on the studio process. From this point on, he kind of went much more into like a little bit more self-financed stuff or a little bit more independent type of stuff here and there. Wasn't going for this type of studio picture where there's a lot of executives kind of whispering in your ear and kind of bantering and kind of calling shots here and there and kind of messing up your film. But as I said, Mark R. Lester, regardless of the flaws that you do end up seeing in this film, which I will address as we go on here, he is a very good director here. You can see the quality of what he can put together with a fantastic cinematographer like Mark Irwin, who had already shot another Dolph Lundgren film before this, Dark Angel / I Come in Peace. And he'd been working with David Cronenberg, he'd worked with Wes Craven, he did Passenger 57, The Blob, bunch of films. I've talked about him a ton of times on this channel. He does really phenomenal work as a DP. And so getting those 2 guys together who know what they're doing, how to put this stuff together, they put a really good type of stuff overall, just like you do see some really slick, confident action put together on this whole thing. And I think he handles the drama very nicely. All that type of stuff, the action, the drama come off really, really well. The humor in some places, I don't think it quite clicks as well as it could. I don't know if that's quite a chemistry issue between Dolph and Brandon in some places, because there are some points where they do hit off very nicely. But some of the dialogue just is not quite as sharp. It's not quite super smart like you get stuff like A Lethal Weapon or Die Hard or 48 Hours or something like that, where you got really crisp dialogue that is very smart and cutting and stuff like that. So it doesn't quite reach those levels. It's a very kind of, you can see that they're trying to hone that energy and that kind of thing there, but it's not quite, it doesn't quite have that sort of snap in a certain way. So some of the humor just it's kind of hit or miss here in the entire film, how the execution goes down, but everything else really kind of comes together very nicely. You can see that just works very well, and you know that Mark L. Lester could do that type of stuff, because he did so well with Arnold on Commando and stuff like that, so he knows how he can do that. Just certain things in the script and some other things don't quite hit that humor beat quite as smoothly or quite as smartly as you could in other films. But talking about Dolph Lundgren here, because he had already been pretty damn well established at this point. Rocky IV, Masters of the Universe, like Red Scorpion and The Punisher and stuff like that, but as a lead, it really wasn't hitting box office gold. A lot of the stuff didn't, like Punisher went direct to video in America, and Masters of the Universe was a complete bomb, kind of crippled Canon Films. And so it's like, some of the stuff is good. It kind of worked more on the rental markets. Dolph really worked well on the rental video markets, where you could go off and watch it, rent all the stuff, and go all that type of stuff. It was more of a draw in that regard. A little bit more on that front in a certain way. So aside from like Universal Soldier, where he does shortly after this, everything else kind of didn't quite nail it right on the head in terms of like box office draw. But the thing you can see about Dolph is that I think at this point in time, he kind of gets incrementally better with each film he does. His talent improves, his acting skills improve, he starts getting a little better here. Like, watch Dark Angel. It was an okay film, but he was pretty wooden. He didn't have the best line deliveries. I think this is a little bit of a step up. He's a little bit more on it. He doesn't have quite as much projection of emotion or charisma as much. You know he has it. He doesn't quite know how to project that out to the audience quite as well. But I think there's a lot of points in the entire film where they kind of get some good things right. He has a great screen presence. The size of him, all that type of stuff, he knows how to hone that in and really make that work for him. He knows what he's doing in that regard, in his physicality, entire thing, with the martial arts, with all the action he has to go with, but just how he works on screen as a physical actor. It works very well how he inhabits the scenes. So he does have good things where you can pull the drama out, pull a little bit of the emotion out in some places, like when he finally goes face to face with Yoshida there and realizes this is the guy who slaughtered his parents. That's a very good moment there, how they shoot it, how he portrays the moment. It is a very good piece. So he does have points where he does kind of break a little bit further out from where he is. He's getting a little bit more comfortable in how he's doing things on screen in this film. I think he does a very fine job here. Like, it's not great, it's not terribly dynamic in terms of the acting quality, but you can see what Dolph is learning with each little thing. And he's kind of working with certain people to find how he can work out better on screen. So you can definitely see that progression at this point in time, how he's getting that point across and working so well. In a way, with Brandon Lee here, obviously is the son of famed Bruce Lee, and obviously the entire tragedy with the Crow after this, but just starting to kind of tap into things. Like, after this, he goes off and does Rapid Fire, which is a big type of showcase for him, much more than this film is, because his character of Johnny here doesn't really have a lot of depth to work with. He's got a lot of, like, kind of counterweight to Dolph's character of Kenner here. Dolph Lundgren's character is a little bit more straight. He's a little bit more dramatic. He's a little bit more tough in a certain way. He's kind of more the straight man, the whole thing. Brandon Lee's character is a little bit more loose. He's a little more levity. He's got the wisecracks, that sort of stuff here and there to kind of bring the charm and the endearing qualities and more the charisma into the entire dynamics of the relationship here, which does, like I said, kind of works in some places. I think there's a lot of scenes where they do hit off very nicely. Some scenes earlier in the film, they're a little off in terms of like getting the chemistry in line here, but they certainly have points later on where the situations kind of give them a little bit more to work with. Like when they're held up in Kenner's sort of little Japanese place and whatnot that he put together himself, and the guys are starting to storm and kind of come after them. They have a nice little banter there. I really like that one, but some of them earlier in the film, not quite as sharp. Like I said, with the entire pieces of dialogue that don't always hit quite as well as they could. But Brandon is able to show so much quality and potential here, just like with just the right material, you can see just how good he can become, because he has so many different qualities of being very engaging, very likable on screen. All these different things where you really do wish there was more depth for him to play. I think that's kind of a shortcoming in the entire film, that the version that we get here does kind of shortchange a lot of different characters aside from Kenner. Kenner's got a lot of things to work with. Dolph has a lot of things to integrate into his character to push the story forward, because it's mainly kind of his story in a certain way, dealing with the vendetta and all that type of stuff, and him kind of driving the plot to a certain degree, because he knows all the sort of seedy circles this entire story is kind of moving around in and stuff like that. So he has a certain amount of savvy to kind of work through this entire thing, and always have this entire thing is like, everyone kind of knows who he is and stuff like that. So he has kind of a reputation. He's kind of known all over the place. He's got a bunch of ex-partners who kind of wish Brandon Lee's character well. So he got these certain things in his ways. It's like he is definitely the main character pushing things forward. Well, Brandon Lee's character, Johnny here, kind of just there, almost sidekick-like. He doesn't get as much things to really work with as a personal story here, which is a shortcoming of the film. But I still think Brandon does a really nice job in this whole thing. He just shows, I mean, once you see him go into action, you know exactly this guy is living up to a reputation here. And despite the fact that he didn't have a whole lot more time left, sadly, he did get to show some really good talent, really good potential in the next couple of films he worked on, like Rapid Fire and, of course, The Crow. But I think just Brandon and Dolph do have a spark there. Don't always get it. They don't always hit it off right, but they do have it. They do kind of grab it in some places. I just think kind of the dialogue in some places do let a lot of people down. Which kind of brings me to Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, who many people know. Shang Tsung, Mortal Kombat, stuff like that. But he's been in so many different films. So much stuff. Such great work. And he's usually always excellent. And there's not a problem with him performing the character of Yoshida here. I think he is very good. He's bringing the goods of what he always brings. That sort of stoic, calm stage presence that still has sort of a simmering thing underneath it. Again, I think there's just a certain thing where he makes more of the character than what is on this page. There's not a lot, when you kind of look at how they're characterizing him, what kind of dialogue they're giving him, there's not a whole lot there. There's not a lot of things to get into a backstory or get into a little bit more substance with the character or give him a little bit more sensibilities to kind of give him a little bit more of a flourish in a certain way. It's pretty stock bad guy type of stuff written into his character that has some weird sort of odd quirks about having offhanded comments about American culture, stuff like that. There's certain things like you could see where they might be going with it. Maybe that's in the missing 10 minutes of the film, along with a lot of other character development and character beats that really seems like it, because there's plenty of action in the film, not as much story and character. And that's the kind of thing, it's like, Tagawa's a great actor. He nails things almost every single time he steps on screen. And it's just the character's like, man, I know he can do really good stuff. It's like, the dialogue is kind of letting him down. It's not as good dialogue as he's had in other roles to really accentuate a lot of different elements of a menacing character. He does have intimidation. He does have a presence on screen. Does have the sort of magnetism in a certain way. It's like there's not a lot for the character to really get much out of him is the thing. It's like he does great work in the entire film. I just feel like there's certain points where the dialogue is just a little uninspired and could have done something a little bit more interesting with him, because he is an interesting actor. And the whole thing where they got fabulous tattoos all over the place. The makeup design of the tattoos was done by Patrick Topless. Really goddamn good production designer. Has been at it apparently for a very long time. It was like, Tagawa was actually in an episode of Miami Vice called Rising Son of Death, where he also played an ex-member of the Yakuza, and the makeup in that thing was just not good. The tattoo makeup was really, really poor, and just makes this look absolutely just like excellent, top-grade type of stuff. So it's like, it must have took them hours to put all this stuff together for all the different actors. Because it just looks absolutely fabulous. It looks entirely authentic. And did a fantastic job designing it and just making the actual makeup and everything. Did a fabulous job in that entire thing, and got like Tia Carrere in this whole thing where she had already been kind of getting her star part going with a lot of different films, but again, a character who doesn't get anything. She's just kind of a damsel in distress type of character. She really has no substance to her whatsoever. Nice to look at. She's got a good voice, playing the singer or anything like that. I kind of think that gave her a body double for a lot of the nudity scenes, because you never actually see her face and her body at the same time when she's undressed. So I kind of think about that on that regard. But she does a nice job in the entire thing. Just like, again, another person who's like capable of doing some good stuff, but didn't give them anything to really do. So it's like, it's kind of frustrating in that regard. And of course you have Toshirô Obata here, who plays Sato, who many people much more know as Tatsu from the first two Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films. He has to show off a lot more martial arts techniques and skills and stuff like that in this film. And it just did a really good job getting a lot of genuine, like, regular Asian actors and Japanese actors integrating the entire film to really kind of fill out that culture and get into the sort of sensibilities of the Yakuza and all that type of stuff. And really kind of like, even the production design is really fabulous in the entire film. It looks so goddamn good, just getting all that sort of sense of culture integrated into the entire aesthetics of the film. Did a wonderful job of that. Again, cast is really well put together. I just feel like there's elements of the script, or maybe in the sense of all that stuff that did get cut out, that kind of leaves the film a little wanting on more substance. Because you know there's a lot of stuff capable in this whole thing. There's a lot of stuff you could really kind of more flesh out with this story, but for a reason, Warner Bros. Decided to chop a bunch of stuff out that I think really kind of negatively affects the entire film. But getting into the music on this entire film, because it was done by David Michael Frank, who had done a lot of different scores. Like, he was kind of like a go-to guy from Warner Brothers when they had all these Seagal films. Hard to Kill, Above the Law, Out for Justice, and they're really good scores. They integrate a lot of synthesizers and orchestral stuff, some guitars here and there, just like even saxophones. It's a lot of different things he would play with in a lot of these different scores, doing a really nice job. But on this one, maybe because Warner Bros. Was kind of like shortchanging it because they knew eventually they were going to dump it out into like 140 theaters or something like that, and they weren't putting a whole lot into it, and they're really kind of disappointing the film. Maybe they just didn't give Frank quite as much time or resources to really put a full, lush score together that really would have enhanced the film to a certain degree, because the main theme is fantastic. I like the main theme so much. There's certain other pieces of the score that I do think work very nicely, but kind of gets a little cheap and cheesy. It's just like, it doesn't quite feel high grade. Even when you're comparing to other films of the era that were kind of doing sort of like Oriental or Japanese sort of things, like John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China or The Golden Child or Black Rain or whatnot. Just doesn't have quite as much texture and quality and sort of sensibilities that I know he can deliver on. So it was a little disappointing, kind of like, it could have been a lot better. The music, the score could have been a lot better. It's like they didn't even really kind of pop for like an end credits song or something like that. They're really kind of going for like, let's just put it all in the synthesizer and just kind of do it that way, nice and cheap and everything, and it kind of shows through to most of the degree. So it's kind of unfortunate. It could have been a little stronger vibe the entire film if you had a little bit more resources to pull on to really make a very much sort of cultural, textural type of thing that feels a little bit more lively and a little bit more refined to a certain degree. So kind of a disappointing type of thing in that regard here, but the entire action of the film is packed with action. There's so much action in this film that you could kind of start seeing as like the ratio of story to action is so lopsided here. Probably because that 10 minutes probably had a lot of character and story beats and stuff like that to flesh out all the other aspects of the entire film. You'll have a big action scene. There'll be like maybe 3 or 4 minutes of like just a little bit of minor sort of character movement or story movement, and then it's another big action scene. This keeps happening over and over the film. The action is fabulous. It's fantastically put together. You got a mix of gunplay and the martial arts stuff and wonderful stunt work and all these different things. It's really goddamn well put together. But when again, you're kind of like, you're kind of shortchanging the story here. It feels like we're just kind of threading together thin tissue of story just to get to another action scene. And that's where I think definitely where you can see the flaws in the film. There's like, it needs more of that. It needs more stuff put together the entire film to really kind of give the entire interlocking story a little bit more weight. It's like getting up to the point where Kerry gets up and sees Yoshida and recognizes them. Man, that felt very rushed in the entire film. Felt like that needed more build-up. You need more build-up of Yoshida or something else, or more of Kenner's backstory, kind of build it up to a certain degree to make it feel bigger. Make it feel like a more important type of thing, to have a little bit more backstory of something like that, or something going on in the entire film that makes it feel a little bit more climactic, kind of get the entire thing going and just trying to connect the dots in a much more sort of climactic sensibility of, I finally found the guy I've been after for like, who knows how many years. So it's like one of those things like, I like the film. The fantastic action. Brandon and Dolph bring the action there, show so much skill. Brandon gets to show so much athleticism and he just excites when you see the speed that he can work at in this entire thing. And Dolph shows exactly what he could do. Even though he's a big, tough, strong jack guy, Ben, he can throw the kicks and all the different things. He's got the techniques down perfectly. All the type of stuff. Just the story's like, man, I want more from the story. Because it does, once you start chopping a lot of things out of it, it just starts being kind of stock to a certain degree. You don't have a lot of like nuance. You don't have a lot of like little things that kind of like accentuate the entire story to a certain degree. But it's still really well put together because Mark Lesser knows what the hell he's doing. He knows how to put the stuff together. You can definitely see the quality of the film that he probably did want released. You can see that in how he's directing things, how everything's put together. You know he can do the work. You just don't get to see the work as it was supposed to be seen. So it's kind of a frustrating thing in that regard. You really want to see a proper vision of the entire thing because it's been 31 years and Warner Brothers put out a bare bones Warner Archive Blu-ray with a nice transfer, but nothing else. And Marco Lesser doesn't seem to talk about the film that much. There's a few things here and there about just kind of throwaway comments and sort of where there's not a lot of meat and substance that you get out of the entire experience here. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that like you'd really like to just get the proper version of, or even see some deleted scenes. There's snippets of footage in the trailer. It's not much of anything. It doesn't really tell you much. Because a lot of stuff they're putting in the trailer is all the action stuff. So you're not going to see a lot of the character stuff that he probably put in the entire film that would have fleshed out the ideas and kind of made things a little bit more balanced. I think an extra 10 minutes of story and character would have balanced the film out nicely. So I think there's a lot of stuff they kind of cut down out of the beginning of the film, and they kind of rearrange some things here and there. It was kind of a mess. You can't really have one editor go at it, then another editor go at it, then yet another editor go at it, and then dump it out. I just feel it was very disrespectful to Marco Lesser, who's a very consummate sort of action director, genre director. He can put together good stuff. And I just think it's just a film that definitely deserved more. It definitely deserved more care. It definitely did, because even when it dumped on DVD, they just put it out as an open matte type of thing, 4x3. They didn't even bother putting a widescreen version out until the Blu-ray. So they kind of Warner just did not care about this film. They did not care about it. They still don't much care about it now. It's the most they did, again, just a bare bones Blu-ray with a nice transfer. And a trailer on it. So it's man, you're kind of wanting for even if we can't get deleted scenes, I'd like to get a commentary track or an interview or something like that. Just something that kind of flesh out what the further ideas of the film were. Because a lot of that footage probably isn't around anymore. Maybe a work print somewhere. Maybe some videotape has it on it. Lord knows, because it just deserved better. Even if things weren't hitting off aces on everything, it still had something. It's been a cult film for over 30 years now. People keep going back to it. It's this film does have a cachet, a very good quality to it, because Dolph has got a very strong catalog of action films to his name, and obviously we have a very small set of films from Brandon Lee where he was showing off what he could really do on screen, and we kind of cherish them. So every time you come across this or Rapid Fire, or obviously The Crow is the most popular one of the bunch, but definitely take your time to watch it, because Brandon was a fantastic talent, and he started showing a lot of quality here, trying to get things up. When you saw the interviews of him behind the scenes, he was lively, energetic, enthusiastic about the entire thing. He was very happy about the entire production. Dolph seemed the same way as well. So it was there was a lot of stuff where just everyone seemed like they were getting along on set and doing good work, and they were really excited about the entire film, and then the studio kind of screwed everything up. So it's kind of a very sad type of thing in that regard, but take what you can get. And it's a very enjoyable, very action-packed film that has good stuff in it. Just need a little extra, little spice on the script, and just a little more time to give a little more love and care in the editing bay. But there's a lot of things where, I don't think Stuart Baird actually cut a lot of the action in the film, because there's a lot of, real quick cuts and stuff like that. Even though action was one of the things he really excelled at, it doesn't quite feel like his work on that regard. He probably worked more cutting down story beats or stuff like that to excise whatever Warner Brothers kind of put notes on, they put a red X through. But regardless of that, the entire film really comes off very well, and I think it's a really worthwhile type of film. Glad I have it. Glad I can watch it whenever I want to. And I think it's just a nice film. I think it's a nice action film that hits off the 1990s really nicely. The early 90s had a lot of these really nice type of the martial arts stuff between Van Damme and Seagal, stuff like that. And these sort of cop thrillers that are going on. Nice vibes all over this place. So it's I think it's a really nice piece of work that still deserves to remain kind of a strong cult favorite, to make sure that even if they didn't treat it very well, the fans can treat it very well. The entire genre can treat it very well. Looking back on it, it's that's a pretty nice piece of work. Despite the flaws, it's a nice piece of work, and you can see what really was probably under the surface of all this studio interference nonsense. So guys, we'd really like to hear what you guys feel about the entire film. And I know people asked about this one. I was kind of thinking I probably want to hit up these Brandon Lee films. I only have a DVD of Rapid Fire because the Blu-ray's a little hard to come by. But regardless of that, maybe one day I'll get around to it, but we'll see what happens. So let me know how you feel, guys. There's always the Patreon around here. You get early access to everything that's being put together in the entire channel. Get audio downloadable versions of all the commentaries we've ever done, so you can listen to them on the go. You don't have to worry about eating up bit rates or whatnot on your downloads of your cellular stuff or whatever the case is. All that type of stuff. So guys, thank you so very much. Take care. Bye-bye.